And we're back to another episode of the Assignment of Benefits podcast. I am with Valkyrie Holmes. Valkyrie, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Good to see you again. This episode's going to be about the My Safe Home program. But Valkyrie, before we jump into that, I think it's appropriate. We want to give all of our guests opportunity to introduce themselves. So, who is Valkyrie Holmes and what is it that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you. I'm Valkyrie Holmes. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Faura. And at our core, we create a more profitable business for insurers in disaster-prone areas. So we're essentially amending a lot of the climate models that currently exist to not only understand which homes are going to be hit by a natural disaster, but which ones are going to survive. And we do that a bunch of different ways, but that's the general gist.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to jump into the My Safe Home program, which fits what it is that you're trying to do. We're trying to lower risk,
Mhm.
right? And it has been my thesis for a while that the climate might be changing, but we can engineer our way out of this faster. And it has been proven over and over again that prevention and mitigation works. Building codes, when enforced, work. Can we start off with My Safe Home and maybe have you give like a little bit of introduction on for folks that might not be aware of it? What is the My Safe Home program? We're specifically talking about Florida, but does it have to be just Florida?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been so fascinated. I've worked in government, in private sector, and public sector, all across the board. And whenever there's legacy stakeholders that combine to create something that more people will eventually use, that's really how we're going to solve all of these problems. So My Safe Home is an introduction into that world for Florida. It's essentially a program that supplies homeowners with grant funding and free wind inspections, mitigation inspections that help them reduce their hurricane risk this summer. The program originally released back in 2022. It was a really great success. And then since then, they have released a little over $200 million in funding, just reopened here July 1st for new residents to take advantage of the program. So I believe it's one of the first in Florida. There's been a couple different ones periodically in different states, but it's a really great opportunity for policyholders.
Okay, so it's a state specific program, correct? Does the federal government have any involvement?
Yeah, so the federal government is supplying the grant funding.
Okay, but the states have to work with the federal government in
Yes,
order
yes,
to in
that's right.
order to get that. Okay. So technically, so property owners would need to look at this on a state to state level to see if their state have actually gone through it. As you said, on July 1st, Florida just opened up the door for My Safe Home in the state of Florida. I see a number like $200 million, and I'm immediately thinking, how far is that going? How far is that going to stretch? What are some of the do you know like what are the some of the mitigation that can be used? Or let me rephrase that. If there was no My Safe Home program, how much like would one of these risk assessments cost? Or like what are we looking at in terms of the economics for a property owner in the state of Florida? I'm assuming it's homes only, not commercial.
Yeah, so it's only for homes, and the program is kind of twofold. So the first one is the actual inspection that takes place. So there's free mitigation inspections for homeowners to essentially get a report that outlines all of the things that they can do to strengthen their home against hurricanes. And so that inspection, it depends on where you are, but a typical kind of 4-point inspection is anywhere from $300 to $500. So that's typically what a homeowner would be paying just to understand their property first and foremost. But then the second half of the program is where it gets really interesting, which is they're allocating up to $10,000 matches, basically $2 for every $1 that a homeowner spends, up to $10,000 on actually improving the risk on their property. So they get this report back, they get all the things that they can do to mitigate their risk, and then when they move forward with that, they get reimbursed for up to half that cost. So that's the interesting thing.
Okay, so arithmetic. Let's go back to school. It's been a little bit, and I don't have a calculator in front of me. That explains a lot. So to get to 10,000, they'd have to invest 20,000. Okay. And does it have to be the items that are mentioned on the report? So if there's something outside of that that they invest in, would that still potentially qualify?
Yeah, so for the actual inspection, because they are certified inspectors from the program, it has to be something that a certified inspector has pointed out on their report. And the same is true with a final inspection that they do at the end of the program. They have to basically verify that they've had some kind of certification from My Safe Home the entire way.
Okay. And so the work gets done. Can it be done in piecemeal, or does all of the work have to be done before they get the reimbursement? So I'm thinking like if it's mentioned putting shutters, for instance,
Mhm.
and something else, do they have to do both things in order to get reimbursed, or can they do it in phases? Because I'm assuming like a lot of homeowners would look to sort of amortize this, kind of spread it out. These are not small dollars.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So the program is essentially on an application basis. So you have to apply for an inspection and get it scheduled. And then after that, you apply for the grant with the work that you want to complete. It depends if you're applying for just one item and then you want to apply for another one later. That's totally
Okay.
fine. The only caveat there is that this money does run out quick. To your point of
Uh,
doing the math, if everyone is spending the maximum $20,000 to get the $10,000 reimbursement, there's around a little over 10,000 people that can actually get that work done. And that goes fast. There is a priority there. So
so in the prior installment of this particular program, I'm assuming all of the funding was used up.
yes.
Do you happen to know the time period that it
It
took?
was all used up that year, or at least allocated that year. So
So within 12 months, it could have been less than 12 months, but within 12 months, the funding was gone.
yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so for anyone that's potentially planning to do this over two springs before two hurricane seasons, that's likely not going to work, right?
Yeah, yeah. And the first installment was now about 3 years ago, back in the 2022 summer. And then it wasn't something that 2023 had included a little while ago. So it's not a guarantee that next year there's going to be 300 million or 400 million or whatever it might be. So definitely take advantage while it's still open.
I think it's part of the reason why we're doing this, Valkyrie, is to shine a light and like make it really successful so that the Tallahassee is much more inclined to kind of keep this thing going over and over and over again. Because that is these things work, right? So from your quantification, let's assume there's like an attorney who's a property owner, right? Does not understand anything about contracting or anything like that. What are we looking at in terms of like uh, before and after, putting not having shutters to having shutters? I'm sure roof related stuff's probably part of potentially mitigation. It could be, wind resistant glass. It could be securing the garage doors. Can you talk a little bit about like what mitigation does? I've seen estimates like for every dollar of mitigation, you get two, three, five, six, $7 of reduced loss, reduced damage going forward. What have you seen?
Yeah, absolutely. So the statistic that I frequently hear is for every dollar that you spend to mitigate the risk on your property, you can get anywhere from $4 to $11 in avoided future losses. So that's a pretty big range, but it definitely is much more dependent on where you are, what disaster it is, things like that. So for hurricane, storm shutters are going to be the biggest bet. My Safe Home specifically emphasizes window upgrades, exterior like door upgrades, including garage doors, and then barriers for your roof or any roof wall connections. Because those typically are points that if you're looking at a home, it's very clear if the roof is needing to be replaced in a lot of cases, but not necessarily those connection points and hurricane straps and things that you can't necessarily see.
Yeah.
So those are the things that will make the most difference. But yeah, I mean, we see time and time again for wildfire in Maui and for even Hurricane Beryl in Texas, we're starting to get a few more success stories of people reducing their risk. It does do something and it does a lot.
That you can go to every disaster now, and there's the couple that I like are the one in Maui, the one in Hurricane Michael that hit the Category 5, hit the Panhandle, and there's one property
Yeah.
just sitting there, and everything around it has been destroyed, and it's like that's, I always think of the black box in an airplane, and it's like they should make the plane out of the black box. Like it always survives. So, but the economics actually get better, right? Can you talk a little bit about this work gets done? If the homeowner communicates this work to their insurer, how is the insurer expected to respond?
Yeah, so in the past, basically since 2022, the program accepted a little over 150,000 applications and they approved around 40,000 grants. So the people that performed these free inspections, that did this work on their property, it was around 38,000 grants that got approved. And 50% of those people that completed it saw an average decrease in their insurance premiums by around $1,000 per year. So when premiums in a place like Florida get into the $10,000 to $20,000 range, depending on where you are, that's knocking a good, 5 to 10% off of that policy, which in a lot of cases can be pretty
Yeah.
monumental.
Yeah, I think the average, depending on who's calculating this, the average premium in Florida, which is the highest in the country, can be anywhere, again, depending on who's calculating it, between $3,000 and $5,000. So $1,000 is a significant return on investment,
Yep.
especially if let's do the math here, the arithmetic. You invest $20,000, you get 10 back, 50% return. Let's use the low end. Let's say you get a 4x return on prevention of future loss. So that's 20,000 you put in times four. So you're protecting your home from $100,000 potentially of loss. That's probably in the deductible for most people. Like that's coming out of your pocket should there
Mhm.
be that kind of damage. And you're getting a reduction in your insurance premiums of, depending on where it is, $1,000 divided by your premium. But it could be, if we're talking the average premium, it could be as much as 25% return over a period of many years. That's a significant return. Like you're going to get all of your money back, then some.
Absolutely. And that's a great incentive for insurance and why specifically like Fora entered the insurance market. It's this direct incentive year over year that people can point to that directly relates to their mitigation activity that says, hey, my insurance premium reduced by this much because I did this upfront work or because I maintained my risk year over year. And this is both keeping my family and my most valuable asset in the majority of cases safe and where I'm also getting a sweet benefit of reducing my premium otherwise.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a great combination.
Yeah. So let's talk about Fora. Let's link the two. So how from a mitigation standpoint, mitigation prevention, like can you talk about how Fora's technology implements those pieces? Maybe start at 30,000 feet and just kind of explain like what specifically Fora does, and then how does My Safe Home kind of link into what Fora is doing on a day-to-day basis for your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So Fora essentially is helping insurers find more profitable business in disaster-prone areas and helping homeowners reduce their risk and qualify for better insurance. So typically how that works is an insurer looks at a property that they know is high risk and they need more information. They ping our platform and we send a digital inspection to the policyholder, and then they can walk around their property for 5 to 10 minutes and collect all the information that they need for us to calculate a resilience score for the property. And a big distinction that I like to make here is typical climate models are going to be telling you that this specific range of the area is high risk for wildfire, high risk for hurricane, when in reality, a lot of that hinges on the fact, a lot of that profitability of the property hinges on the fact that that property needs to survive that disaster. So I recently was talking to a carrier the other day that, and we were talking about the shift in disaster risk and the idea that insurance is based off of a business model that we are insuring events that are either small or rare and infrequent. And natural disasters are not rare and infrequent anymore. In fact, they're getting larger and more devastating every year. And so, with that same model, we have to be able to understand which properties in our portfolio are actually going to give us the best margins of that risk. And
Hmm.
that's why it's important to know that people know about mitigation, that they care about wanting to take action, and that they see that there's tangible value and benefit that's tied to it beyond just grant funding that may or may not exist next year, right? They need to see that return year over year to continue mitigating their risk. And this is great news for insurers at the end of the day because they have a direct relationship with the homeowner that relies on them keeping their risk down, and they can directly reward them for essentially reducing the average loss ratio of that portfolio.
Yeah, I mean, it's so relevant because yesterday, I don't recommend this, but when you go on Twitter or whatever it's called, XYZ, I was on Twitter and I'm a part of several insurance groups, and one in particular, they were discussing how the company was talking about like cleaning your gutters out, right? And that sort of thing to prevent flooding and other things from happening. And someone on Twitter said, I'm doing it, but the insurance company's just recommending it. They're not following up on it. And he was a bit perturbed that
Yeah.
he's like, I'm getting the same rate as someone who's not doing it. He's like, there should be something in the app that kind of confirms that. And I think that has been a really big disconnect between carriers and their policyholders is carriers have the information. They know what it would take to actually reduce risk.
Mhm.
And I think they've superficially communicated to that. And the example I just gave, but there are things that they can do. Like I foresee like with technology from Fora, like there's technology that's going to be plugged in where we're going to now be able to separate the property owners, the homeowners that do have a bit of a risk management ethos, or at a minimum would like to save some money on their premium. So they'll act,
Yeah.
right? You can incentivize them from those that won't. And that's to me, that's a tell, right?
Mhm.
Like which one would you rather insure? I want to insure the one that has risk management on their
Yeah.
mind. Like the one that doesn't could be a moral hazard. You could be adversely selected against. Like you don't know what you're getting on that one. That speaks volumes if they're going to make that investment for whatever reason. What are some ways additionally, like how is Fora engaging to bridge that communication? Because I think that's the biggest problem. Insurers know what will reduce loss. How do we get the policyholder to follow through?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the future of insurance is transparency at the end of the day. And when I look at existing in insurance or like adjacent kind of areas of insurance, like life insurance, where it's highly variable depending on the person, because that is the risk you're taking on. And now with telematics and auto insurance, property insurance hasn't needed to shift really very much because properties don't change very much year over year. And so now climate being this new hyper personalized variable, it makes sense that we're trying to invest more in the policyholder experience and getting the policyholder involved in essentially taking a little bit more responsibility for the risk on their property. And I think the relationship there is where Fora helps the most. It's bridging the gap between this kind of like whether it's an appeal process of a homeowner saying, "Hey, I my policy went up or my policy got canceled. Why is this the case? I can show that I have done this work." Or if it's a new business, people are applying for new insurance, educating them on the things that they can do to reduce their premium and actually reduce their risk over time. A lot of the time, it's just policyholders don't know what is impacting their
Yeah,
property, don't know why that factors into their premium the way it does.
I think insurers can just go so much further. There have been so many cases recently here in Florida, stories of premiums going up significantly over many years, but the rates aren't actually going up that high.
Hmm.
It's the replacement value of
Yeah.
the property. So the rate's staying, let's say, roughly the same, but the replacement value of the home keeps going up. So the premiums go up, but the insurer doesn't know that. They
Yeah.
just see the premium. They think the premium is the rate and they get confused on it. So I think there's a lot the insurers can do to bridge that. Let's talk about transparency just for a second. One final kind of stream of thought. Let's open this up. A lot of insurers are afraid to be transparent. How, in your engagement with them, have you seen a transition where they understand the value of transparency, or do you find that there's still a reticence of like, well, don't really want to share that information. That's a little bit too, in the weeds of our business, because that's been my experience. But I'm wondering, you're not the first one that's talked about transparency. So I'm wondering if there's an inflection point, maybe a cultural shift in insurers around transparency. How do those conversations kind of work out when you're having them?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's still a lot of carriers, and I would argue the more majority of carriers that are pretty risk adverse to actually like looping policyholders into the process. And big carriers like State Farm with their I forget what it is, like the Auto Connect app kind of thing that you put in your car. That was one of the first, major steps into trusting policyholders
Mm,
with their assets. And at the end of the day, I think the more like tech first and innovation heavy carriers are realizing that if they can put some responsibility into the hands of policyholders, it ultimately helps the most attractive customers, the customers that
yeah.
will continue to be the most profitable for them, further reduce their risk and get them a better return. Of course, there's going to be people that try to take advantage of the system, but those people will exist in every system and they continue to exist. But I don't think it's anything. In fact, I think it would help way more people than not including policyholders in this would help.
Yeah. And we're not just talking about natural catastrophes. I mean, the subject of this podcast episode is My Safe Home, but you brought up telematics. That immediately got me thinking of I have a Ting device from Whisker Labs
Yeah.
that measures the voltage and the current in the property. And I get like a wealth of information. And that the Maui fires, there were enough Ting devices in that fire that Ting was able to determine the source and the location of the fire, where it started. They could tell it was a utility related problem. Like we have all of these smart devices,
Yeah.
and and my thinking about that is like the my Ting device will allow me to catch a fire if it's wire oriented, electrically oriented before the fire starts, and I can actually do something about it. But you have your Ring doorbell, which
Mhm.
has just got to go on YouTube, has prevented
Yeah.
thefts, have prevented break-ins, right? If the burglar's coming in and you can talk to them, I see you, like police are coming, at a minimum, loss costs are going to stay even, but it's very likely they're going to go down, sort of thing. So that's additional mitigation. That's additional transparency that insurers could kind of think about it like, hey, we're already doing this with telematics. Let's do it with the telematics of the property as a way to kind of keep expanding transparency. How do you think about that sort of dynamic?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we have all of the information we need, right? Right. There's no secret that everyone is listening and that all of our devices are have all of our information and all those things. And that's a scary reality to some, but it is the reality in the majority of cases. And if we have all of that information readily available to us, it's just about making it actionable, right? So we already have these devices that can tell us about if a disaster is going to be near us and turn on sprinklers for our property. And it's going to be a mesh of these hardware devices and software to help people both on resilience and mitigation and suppression in a lot of cases. But yeah, I mean, we have it's just about making it tangible at this point. It's just about putting it in people's hands and allowing it to be as useful as possible without making it overly complicated.
Yeah. So, Fora, can you spell out your web address for people to find you?
Yeah, you can find us at faura.us. And it's Fora, Faura on everything.
Okay, so I will put Valkyrie's LinkedIn information to connect with her and the link to the website in the show notes. Thank you for coming on. Let's do this again. Let's come in like a few months. Maybe there'll be some statistics on My Safe Home, and we can report back to the audience. Hopefully some success. I believe like the money will go, but it'll be really good to show some success through the program. So thank you so much.
No, absolutely. Thank you. And I'm looking forward to the next one.